right, welcome everybody. We are here at this event organized by the ISCF. As I understand, it's the National Schools Chess Federation, and it's an affiliated organization to FIDE, which helps people be better at teaching core values of our sport. Let me present myself. I'm Grandmaster Daniel Virni. I'm from Italy, and I'm here as the host of this event, and I will be leading this interview, as we might call it, and I will be asking some core questions, I would say, and eventually we'll end up getting some questions from you as well. So let me introduce our guest, somebody who I know personally quite well, even if it's not the other way around. His name is Jacob Aagaard. I think I didn't pronounce it well, but I tried my best. He's a grandmaster from, I believe, Shankland and Denmark. I'm not sure, but he will obviously make things right when he will correct me in most of the things that I'm talking about. So he is well known as a chess coach. However, me personally, I met him first in Italy when he was scoring his final grandmaster norm in Prato, if I'm not mistaken. And subsequently, he went on, getting a lot of great achievements, starting with one of my fellow, let's say, arch enemies, Sabino Brunello, who obviously was and is a part of an Olympic Italian team. And we battled up in many events, including Italian Championship, obviously team championships, and so on. And apart from Sabino, obviously, Jacob is well known by, let's say, training, but also putting up a lot of work together with some prestigious grandmasters and in general, like world-class stars, such as Boris Gelfand, who almost made it to the very top by getting to the championship match against Gelfand. Obviously, Shankland, who is one of the most, I think, meticulous writers over there. I know this because I also made some chessable courses, and I know that this is a golden standard by Sam. So this is definitely something that Jacob can be proud of. He can be proud about anything, anybody he's been working with. And more recently, I think he also helped Nodirbek Abdusattorov get to the top. Now, Nodirbek is obviously a world-class star. So that's also one of many things that Jacob is famous for. Just to finish, Jacob is, let's say, more famous to us, let's say, ordinary grandmasters because of his books. And we were all sweating by, training on these books. I remember one of the first times we read the attacking manual, if I remember correctly, the title. Obviously, it's been translated in many languages, but it was about calculation mainly, and it was already a very high standard for us. So we actually took a whole week by training on this book with let's say the B Italian team. So he might be considered a modern Varetsky, I think, in a certain way. But okay, I already have been talking too much. I will pass the ball to Jacob, and he can correct me and also introduce yourself in a better way.
I think that was very flattering. I tried myself. I put together some slides here. I tried myself to sort of, not be embarrassed about saying anything positive about myself. And it was more or less the same thing I came up with. So of course I had many other students, and some of them will be well known, and some of them not. But I always think that it's a sort of a unique project whether you're working with someone like Boris Gelfand, who is a top 10 player for decades, and try to get him to the World Championship, or you work with a young player who then becomes an IM, a GM, and national champion. As recently, I've worked with Yalis Sokolovsky from Israel. It's sort of, even though you could say, oh, it's not as exciting as your student playing for the World Championship, then in some ways it is, because it's a different person, it's a different journey. The one thing I wanted to add here, so I'm giving this talk pro bono for a simple reason. I think I feel almost bad about being paid for something like this, but I have put on the logo of our academy, killerchesstraining.com. If anyone are interested, they can always check it out. And also this week, I'm publishing a new book called A Killer Guide to Attacking Chess, which actually is a sequel to the attacking manuals, going over the same ground, but with different examples. And it's also out on Chessable. I think it's already out today. So I was sent some questions in advance, and the way I plan to approach this is I'm gonna go with them on the slide. So I don't know if the slide is up on the big screen. I think it's just me at the moment. It would be good if the slide is up, make me smaller. Is the sharing, it doesn't seem like it's sharing. So anyway, the question I was given here was, in your experience, my experience, what qualifies best to predict a player's long-term development beyond just achieving early results? I'm not even sure early results necessarily are the main indicator of long-term improvement. So I should say something. I just want to say something very basic, which is everything is a little bit abstract here, and sort of general questions with general answers, and it can make some things a little bit difficult. But I think I have some important points to all these questions. I think the first thing to remember is that talent is real. So there are some various very popular books like The Talent Code, The Talent is Overrated, and other books. It's sort of trying to come with the argument that talent doesn't matter, it's just mass repetition. That's obviously not the case. Anyone who have worked with very talented individuals know that you need both talent and work to be very successful. And those who have less talent very rarely become world champions, but they can make it up to the top. So, for example, among the people I had on the screen earlier, everyone had what I would call a local talent. Sam was a local talent in California, and Boris was a local talent in Minsk. Sabino was a local Italian talent. Nodirbek is the only one who is incredibly talented. So the three others still, Sam was incredibly strong in the period of 2018 to 2021. In 2018, when he won the US Championship, Capablanca Memorial, and the Pan American Championship just in a row, he was incredibly strong and was up at 21 in the world. And he could easily have become better if things hadn't gone the way they had. Already in 21, there had been some bad periods. We had COVID and lockdown, and affected a lot of us quite badly. But even there, he almost made it all the way in the World Cup and would have qualified for the candidates. He is not an exceptionally talented player. So it's sort of like, on the one hand, if we ignore that there is such a thing as talent, I think we're doing a disservice to children and to young people. For example, I'm slightly dyslexic and still have written 50 books. It's not like I ever overcame dyslexia. It's just there were tools to work with. There were, yeah, what could I say, people helping me. It was possible to maneuver around it. In chess, you don't get help when you're at the board. Talent is very, very helpful. There are some people who love chess who have very, very little adaptation of it. So it is how easy you learn things in chess. Definitely is talent. And there is some need of talent for a player to become a player. But you can also be very lowly talented like myself. And I think at my peak, I came with a sort of low rating, and then I had a child at the end of my peak period and got a job that sort of stopped everything. But I think I sort of benefited from not being very talented because I had to learn how to learn everything. The problem is when you have situations where coaches are working with very talented kids and then working with kids that are not very talented. The very talented kids make connections between things and learn a way to do things very easily by themselves, more or less, just by being thrown in the water, they learn to swim. Maybe not perfect style, but they learn to swim. And then they kept being given encouragement opportunities. And that's usually why we see very talented players go through the rankings quite quickly. There are other things as well that can really, really benefit a player on the way up. And this is sort of a little bit dependent on if they receive good instruction. So probably the most important thing is some sort of determination or obsession with playing and learning and improving. Someone who wants to work all the time. I mentioned Sokolowski, who is, I think I don't hurt his feeling by saying he's not an exceptional talent, except that he really, really works all the time because he's very determined and really wants to play well. And he has his doubts and his insecurities, like all teenagers do. But simply the mass effort he's putting in will help him a lot. Also, something that's quite important for an early prediction for if someone is successful is if they're competitive. I remember the child of a friend was playing a tournament, and after 3 rounds, we saw him and asked, "How are you doing?" He said, "I have 3 points." "How am I? 3 points. I'm very happy." We met him after the tournament. "How did you do?" "I had 3 points." Just as happy. And it sort of felt like there's a little bit of competitive eagerness with him. Now, he was a very smart kid, very happy, and he's now an adult and a very competent adult, great young man. But I don't think he was meant for competitive sport. So that's sort of a part of it. And then we come to sort of the last, how can we say, the last traits that I felt was really important when thinking about it. It was the ability to receive instruction, to listen and try to do what they're told. Not like without any kind of experimentation or anything like that, but just someone who's actually listening and then try it. And then try it in their own way and so on. But this sort of helps. And this is probably one of the most important ones, is an ability to deal with repetition and or boredom. So one thing in modern sports, which is across all sports, is they're becoming more and more technical. And because they're becoming more and more technical, there needs to be and more technical instruction. There needs to be a higher and higher technical level needed for the players to compete. And for example, sitting and struggling through my books without throwing them out the window in frustration is something that sort of is needed. And there are some of those character traits where you can maybe see with some certain young people, they don't have them. They just don't have them. They will never have them. And I saw that with my own kids. And then suddenly you find something where they are actually really interested. And then it seems they had them anyway. And this is something I think it's very hard to force a child to become good at chess if they're not, if they don't have if they don't have the heart for it inside, if they don't have the fire inside burning for it. If they do, then they need help with structure. They need help with material. They need help with coaching. They need help with structure, generating their days, and not just go by what they feel in the moment. But it's important to sort of be realistic and see if it's a hobby for them that they enjoy, or if they have this determination to win, because it's not something in my experience that you can force upon them. Dan, I don't know how you prefer to structure this. Probably it's a good time to go in.
I think you're doing great. So I'm just here listening to your.
Well, if someone has any questions, I think sort of like I have essentially seven big questions I have here. So maybe they create other questions we can get at this point.
After each of the parts.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's good.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, I can ask some questions.
You can ask a question. That's good.
So obviously, I have been part of this kind of journey with different people. My question is, what will be the role of the trainer in order to facilitate? For example, you mentioned the repetition and dedication, and you also mentioned some sort of delusional obsession that people need. What will be the role of a trainer to make it easier for the student to become more comfortable in doing, for example, repetitive tasks?
I think that there are two roles, the sort of the primary ones. The first one is to help structure material. So children, they will not by themselves find any structure to their training. They will just do whatever is sort of coming their way. And the idea of kind of trying to say, okay, we do this now, and then you know what is next, the next few steps. They don't have to know what is next. They just need to be sort of, let's do this, and we're working on this now. And I will talk a little bit more about how I believe it's good to interact with students. But that's the one thing. The other thing which is really important is confidence. So when I work with Sam or Yali or Nodirbek, one of the important things, it's not something we spend a lot of time on, but sometimes I do spend like a 20 minutes conversation where it's saying, you're doing the right things. You are on the path to where you want to go. So there's an old saying, where there's a will, there's a way, but it's the wrong way around. This is like this idea that we just have will and we create a way in front of us. It doesn't happen. What happens is the way, the path, we can see it in front of us, and then the will to walk it will come. Or maybe it won't. If it won't, then it's not for us, and I think this is a really important part. So for example, with students, sometimes I've had, they've been saying, oh, things are not going, I'm working, I'm enjoying it, and so on and so on. But I feel like I'm not improving as fast as I should, or, yes, there's some good results, but, other players are better and so on. And it's very rare. Like I also worked with Pragnananda at some point when he was very young, and Vaishali. And With them, you have these big talents where you know where they're going, and they win so many things along the way and get so many accolades. There, they all know it's happening. They just need to keep enjoy working. But with some who are not these big talents, but somehow it's always the projects I find more interesting going into is like Yali. He became grandmaster last year. He's now 19. Which is far away from any records. But if you looked at his progression from in the last 5 years in rating and compared it in the last 5 years with Adogmis and Kamer and these guys, the curves were actually pretty similar. He just started a bit later, and the idea that he sort of is doing badly would be something he can sit on his own, not knowing anything, not having any confidence and no knowledge of these things. This is something where it's very important to sort of keep their spirits up, have a plan, and tell them you just have to follow the plan. It's I think that is really, really essential for a coach to have, like, I believe in you. If you do the work, you will get the results. And in my experience, the players who do the work do get the result. What is the difficult thing is when you're constantly evaluating how things are going. One of the things I say in most classes in the academy is that this is training, and you don't evaluate your performance in training. You evaluate by a simple, did I show up or didn't show up? I show up for training. If you showed up, it's a success. So you should just be happy you were training, and then okay, maybe you had a day below average in training, but that's okay. The important thing is you will have days below average. They always happen. Chess is hard. It's getting better. It's difficult, and you have to keep going. And the way to keep going is to show up. You showed up. You're a success. And this kind of very, very basic truths can often get lost inside the confused head of a teenager. So things like that, I think, is very important for the coach. Okay, let me go to the next question here.
Yeah, sure. Great.
So I see here. How do you encourage players to make their own decisions and develop independent thinking during games? Well, chess is a problem-solving game, so I think it's very hard to avoid independent thinking because the problems will always be sort of different. Of course, we could have a 10-hour camp just on talking about structuring thinking, which would be quite technical and would be for coaches only, not really for parents. But I think one of the important things to mention here is to have a good definition of confidence. To me, confidence is preparation in action. I'm not sort of a naturally confident people. I'm sure we all know people who are incredibly confident in their own abilities and decisions. And often those people are far less realistic about their own abilities and the consequences of their decisions. I find generally people who are incredibly confident, it's very easy to trust them, but probably usually not a very good idea. I'd rather have people who are sort of unsure about things, but are doing the best they can after careful consideration, rather than people who believe they are born geniuses and everything coming out of their mouth is great. And I think also in chess, we see that there's a lot of people who are maybe not necessarily deeply confident in other situations, but at the board, they learn to be confident in their own decisions and basically understanding that the best I can do at the board in this situation is the best I can do. And they learn to earn this confidence. And this comes partly from training. When you train specific things and slowly master various things, if it's calculation, if it's technical play, if it's positional play, if it's strategic thinking, if it's tactics, and the many other themes we have in chess. As you slowly learn to acquire them, your confidence will grow, your ability to make decisions will grow. But I think it's always important also to teach kids that they have to make the decisions and then revise them. And if they don't, like there's this Danish expression, like, what would a smart man do here? Where you sort of outsource your thinking process to a mythical character that's smarter than you, which of course is sort of bizarre because it would be a projection of yourself, but just the whole concept of putting away responsibility, I think that's not a good thing. It's better of like, you do your best. If you think a crazy looking move is the best move, you play it, and then afterwards we talk about it. We find out if it was good, if it was bad, what went right, what went wrong, and have this confidence of a feedback loop. I think also it's very important for young players to be imaginative, to be curious, to experiment, and not just be result oriented. So it's you always have to be careful with feedback, especially if they're not like with Nodirbek Abdusattorov. You could say anything because he's such a confident and resourceful individual. But with others, I would be a little bit more careful in how I talk about things. My main goal would be to understand the thinking and to talk about, discuss it, and say and find improvements together with the kids. But there are two little things I wanted to put in at this point, which is the importance of mass repetition. There's a lot of things in chess where we talk rather abstractly about the game, and you can come with a lot of knowledge about the game in an abstract way. But chess is still a physical sport. It's just it's the brain that we're using a lot. And when neurologists say that the best way of understanding the brain is to understand it as a muscle that works through repetition, I think as chess trainers we should take them at their word and believe that. And simple mass repetition is the best way to confidence and to ability, whether it's tactics, calculation, positional play, whatever. And that means solving a lot of exercises and get used to thinking, also when tired. So this is sort of the main advice, also for building confidence, but certainly also for building skill, which is it's mass repetition. You don't get around it in any sport at all. And one of the things, so to add to that, is it's very, very useful for a young player to think every day, to get positions to think about every day, whether it's a game, training game, or exercises. The thing is, when we sleep, our brain is learning. It goes first, it repairs our body physically, then emotionally and intellectually. So it's very important that we go through that whole process, and that every day we learn something, so we keep developing our understanding of things on a daily basis. Training, let's say 1 hour a day, every day in a week, is better than training 3 times 4 hours. I'm quite convinced of it, both from experience and also from the theoretical stuff I have read. So I think that's really important. So yeah, think every day and mass repetition. Okay. Any questions this time?
Any questions? I'm ready for another question, please. Don't worry. So you talked about confidence and independent thinking, and I think it's good. It's a good moment to ask a question that I saw that is not listed in the next questions. And I think it's a very common thing. I think most people don't really pay enough attention. At least that's what I see among my students. And I'm talking about the use of the engine. So what do you think about the ratio, let's say, between using the engine and what you said, thinking by yourself? For example, how far would you go in taking or making some risky decisions compared to the evaluation of the engine? And in general, what would be the optimal, let's say, usage of the engine, especially for the younger generation, who, in my opinion, is much more engine dependent?
Well, there's one little point which is worth making, that probably the three greatest player of the 21st century, which is Carlsen, Aronian, and Gukesh, or at least the three most successful, that all of them were already very strong players before they work with an engine at all. And of course, this also brings us into a little bit of general discussion about how to raise children and dealing with AI. Essentially, I think that people my age, like the first time an engine became useful for me was 1997. I was doing an opening analysis with Peter Heine Nielsen, and we were just analyzing various things, and we tried to put it in an engine for the first time. And the engine found a novelty, which was quite strong, and I later used it to win a game against John Ems. But at that time, I was already 24 years old. My understanding of chess, to a great extent, had happened without engines, and I had a sort of a solid fundamental to use engines from. And what I'm very worried about with my own children and generally with young people at the moment, and it's not just chess engines, because we have had 30 years of learning to deal with them, but also with general life engines, AI, that there's this simple principle that the moment you turn on the engine, you turn off your own mind. I think everyone has tried watching games online, and the engine says something where it's very clear the moment you see what the engine says, and everyone's like, why is the idiot not doing anything? But if you try to follow games without the engine, top games, you'll see you have no idea what's going on at all. And I think that that's a really important point, that in my view, the role of the engine, it should be as little as possible. It's a great thing at the end to give us some better feedback. But ideally, it would be the coach is using the engine and the player is not, unless the coach shows the engine. So when I give classes in the academy, sometimes I have to move on because my direction is this way and sort of questions are asking me this way. And sometimes I turn on the engine to just give the evaluation and people can see and they feel sort of close. So we close off this way and we could go in the direction I want the class to go. But I think really there's a tendency, when you turn on the engine, you turn off your own mind, especially now when they are so strong you can't argue with them. I want to come back with another point I didn't make before, which is really, really important, which is don't sleep with an alarm clock. Organize your life in a way that you wake up before you need to wake up for an alarm clock. It's really it's the healthiest thing you can do for your life. I think it's more important than your what you eat exactly and how much exercise you are. If you sleep all the way until you wake up by yourself continuously, it's incredibly healthy for you, both your emotional, your intellectual, and your physical development, whether you're a child or you're an old man as me. And also another thing, this is just a very little correction to you, Daniel. You said I made my last Grandmaster norm in Brato. I made my fourth Grandmaster norm in Brato. I had made my last required norm like 3 weeks before. So Okay, let's go to the next question. Okay, so here, how do you adjust your coaching methods to suit different personalities, strength, and ways of learning? It's everything. I think so. The first thing is, if you come with your system and just squeeze the student into the system, if you're having a bigger class, of course, you're giving the talk and you're explaining things. It's not the same as individual coaching. But when you're in a situation of individual coaching, if you're not sort of reacting to the student and trying to work with them, I see it's for me, it feels like it's already doomed to happen. If nobody feels respected, nobody respects people who they feel are not listening to them. It just doesn't happen. So if you want to be a good coach, you have to be listening as much as you're talking. I think someone gave me the ratio of like 60-40 once, was like a teaching expert. You have to listen 60% and talk 40% as a coach. It might even be less for a chess trainer. Because the thought, the period of just thinking where the student is just thinking is quite an important part of it. Normally when I approach students, these days, individual students are normally like top 100 players usually. We try to work on the lowest hanging fruit, and that's mainly for psychological reasons. Because if I can have reasonably early success or a feeling of improvement from the student, then I got them. Then the way is there. The path is in front of them. They know the path is there. Now they just have to commit to it. Establishing that for the student, that it is possible. The thing which you want, which you're almost afraid of saying that you want, and you think you cannot have because you're not talented enough, you're not rich enough, you're not, I don't know, in my generation it was Russian, you're not Indian, all these kind of things. You're not from, if you're Indian, you're not from Tamil Nadu. Whatever it is that you sort of think is a story, and children will have these strange stories of why they cannot do it because they haven't done it before. So for them, it feels unnatural. It's very rare you have these kind of people like Abdusattorov, who simply believes that, of course, I'm going to kill everyone. Of course, I'm going to beat everyone. It is written. It's very rare you have that kind of student. So you have to create the belief in that they can walk the path so that they can actually do the actions that work. Now, one thing that sort of is probably it's quite obvious when I say it, but still many people can sort of get too much lost into self-help and performance psychology and so on. What really matters is if the student is doing the work and really trying and really pushing. We have seen in chess some sad stories with parents who are constantly threatening and or beating their children, and they become very good. You've seen it in other sports as well. They never become grateful to the parents, so it doesn't work. It's but it does work as well as positive things does. It's just you have to be sort of borderline psychopath to do it. But it's important to understand this thing that the work is what makes you better. So unless you want to, beat the kids if they don't do the work, which I don't recommend at all, you want to sort of make them want to do the work. And the way to do that is to create the path in front of them. And that can only happen if you listen to them and if you show them with language and with training that they can improve, then they want more of it. And this is sort of like how improvement works. You do more, you get better results, and you enjoy more, and then you do more. So there's sort of this circle. But what often happens is that from doing more to getting better and getting the results, usually it takes longer than we think it should take, and we give up on the way. And that's for all humans, no matter the age. Things always takes longer than we think they should, even if we know that they take longer than we think they should. So there, it's very important for the coach to sort of be there. And kids come in all possible personalities. So if you don't adjust to them, I don't see it's going to happen. And same also with if they learn better, if they respond better to one training method than another, well, you do more of it. You want to make it work. The more they mature, the better they get, the more they get used to working, the more you can sort of say, okay, now it's time to do something you don't enjoy, because that's where you really will get better a lot. This is very normal for the players I work with, who are some of them famous names, that they have something that they have enjoyed working on, and it has taken them to quite a high level. But if they want to break through the barriers that sort of one-dimensional work has put on them, they have to learn to do stuff they actually don't enjoy. But that's not a big question for children. There is one thing I want to add to this here, which is I think it's very useful. This is something I've been doing more and more. It's very useful to have a very clearly defined project with a student. And it doesn't matter if they're a child or an adult. But to, for example, say, okay, for the next 3 months or 6 months, we're doing rook endgames. You're going to become world-class at rook endgames. We're going to really understand rook endgames, or the French defense, or attacking play, or calculation. Whatever you sort of feel is the thing that will work well with the student at that point. And sometimes if they're already well-trained and strong, it's often things that are sort of outside their comfort zone. While in the beginning, I would work within their comfort zone, sort of to get momentum going. I think that's that for that question.
Okay, great insights as usual. Do you have any questions from the audience? I don't know if maybe we can have some questions from the online audience. I don't really know how that works. Guess there should be some kind of messaging. I don't see that. If not, you can go to the next question. I don't have any questions here because you already answered them.
Well, by the way, that's the trick to becoming a good writer. So
Okay.
at some point, I learned that being a chess writer would be my profession. It sort of was something I did during university because I was offered a little bit of pocket money. At some point, I realized I was not really going to classes, but I was taking on more and more chess writing projects, and understood, okay, I need to be professional here, and this is when we founded Quality Chess. And one of the most important things I taught to authors, I have taught to authors over the years, is when you write something, it's very often easy to make statements. White is better. Clear statement. And just answering the question why. Constantly just ask yourself the question when you're reading, okay, here I'm just claiming something. Why is this the case? The best writing I find is the one where you try to answer the reader's questions as they form. So it's like, yeah, okay, white is better, but why? Oh, because of, and so on. And you try to sort of guess the questions of the reader. And that's also, as a lecturer, you try to guess the questions, and here, hopefully, I did quite well. The next question here: what are the most important factors parents should consider when selecting a coach for their child's long-term chess development? I want to start with sort of a little pet theory of my own, which is, I think that there are sort of like two kind of individuals, if we take from chess. There are people who are really, really very interested in their own performance, and that's the majority. And then there are those who are really interested in the performance of their friends or students or others in general. Some of these people choose to become organizers and make events like this and just want to help people. Some of them are, sitting in the team match, playing their own games, but then constantly going and looking how the team is going. Often they get made team captain. It doesn't mean they don't enjoy playing themselves. It's just the other thing is more attractive. And then they're the ones who are, not seeing what happens on the board next to them. They have their own game to play, and that's where their mind is at. And from the perspective of a trainer, who is the first kind of character, it would be a tragedy if there was no students who could focus on the games that you could help. So there's no moral dimension to this. It's just simply an observation. But this brings us to a very simple question. When you're looking for a coach, I think the first thing you should have is you should look for people who have this interest in others character. There are in chess and in other things, like I play the guitar badly, and I've received a lot of guitar instruction. And most of my guitar instructors have been players who had to make a living. And they come unprepared for the lesson. They don't remember the last lesson. They don't care about the lesson. They're just hoping for it to end so they can get paid. They know they have to do it. That's the worst thing to do with a coach, is to have a coach who's there because he has to try to make a living. I think the most important factor is for someone who is really motivated to help, to listen and to help, not someone who's there for themselves, but someone who's there for the student. It's really like, if you are from there and the person is not an idiot, you can do great things. So, for example, we have now the not it girl, but it coach at the moment, who is a Roman. Sorry, I'm very bad at pronouncing Vedanyak, who's this lovely, lovely Ukrainian man. He's about my age, maybe a few years older, who was moved to Germany many years ago with his wife and had children there. And he's an IM. He was never a really, really strong player, but over time, with working as a coach and being interested in it, he developed an interesting system, which is quite different from my own. But it's a good thing about chess; it can be played and understood in many ways. But he's now working where he worked with FIDE, and then FIDE introduced him to Sandarov, and Sandarov introduced him to Bibisara, and I can't say her surname without killing my tongue, and also Yakoboyev. So these young players, and now he's working with them, and of course Sandarov will play for the World Championship. And the enthusiasm for him in the coaching, the working on it, the pushing his students, that is much more important than his actual chess skill. And I think that's a good thing to remember from for parents when they're looking for a coach, is you need someone who can excite your child and make them work. And it's okay if they're learning together. Roman has, like he says, 40,000 positions for training material. I have 25,000, and then that's not published, and then a lot of stuff there is. So probably the same. But reality is my training material is published. Turetsky's training material is published. And there are other people who publish training material. A trainer doesn't need to create original training material. They might have to invest in a book. In an interview, Sandarov said that he never really read a book, but he's working through books together with Roman, and Roman is sitting there reading for him, and just like whatever this brilliant young man who's really an immense talent, who became grandmaster and then started playing video games nonstop because he achieved a goal. He's now playing for the world championship because he has someone who can make him work and apply himself. It is not whether or not the process the Roman uses is the best possible or not. I think is less important. It's the fact that he gets Sandarov to work very, very hard that has given him an edge. So that's the question. Yeah, is the coach excited about coaching and excited about coaching the kid? And does he behave in a way that works with your kid? It makes your kid want to be coached by him. If your kid's excited about chess, excited about going working with the coach, I think everything else, the technical things, are sort of a little bit less important. And it's very often kids, parents, they want to have some sort of, it has to be a grandmaster, and then it has to be, one-on-one, and there's sort of a lot of prestige things where, for example, we do this academy, and there are people who have been immensely successful coming out of the academy, winning the Indian Championship 2 years in a row, winning the World Rapid Championship, Grandmaster national titles, all kind of achievements, even though it's not one-on-one. And some of our coaches are not grandmasters. Most of them are, but some are not. It's not about that. It's about the excitement and doing good work. So I think if you locally have someone who is excited to coach, then it doesn't matter so much if they have the best training system. If they can read, it's already a good start. There are a lot of good books out there you can follow, a lot of good programs. It's about getting things going. That's the end of that question from me.
That's for you. I think you synthesized it pretty much perfectly. Do you have any questions from the audience? Yeah, please.
One-on-one sessions better than the kids.
Are one-on-one sessions better than classes with 2 or 3 kids? Is the question.
They can be marginally better. So one of the things. So I normally do like this thought experiment with students and sometimes with parents. If we imagine that Daniel and we will go to the gym for the next year, and he goes 5 times a day, 5 times a week, and trains with a random app, just some program from an app, and I go 2 times a week with the best gym coach in the whole world. We all know that Daniel will outperform me immensely. So, if you're a millionaire and you can afford top coaches to be, like nonstop with your children, yeah, that's probably an edge. But also to be with other kids where they enjoy being with other children, and there's a feeling of group, feeling that there's a social feeling. I think it's just as good. Like we have in Chennai, they had this group of 4 people working together, which was Vaishali, of course, will play the World Championship, Pragnananda, who just won Norway chess, Kachkian, who's one of the strong strongest players in Tamil Nadu, a very strong Indian grandmaster, top 100 player, and Aravind, who was, I think, in top 20 not long ago. The four of them always worked in group lessons with Hermes or with other coaches, including in some period also with me. And they were together, they were friends, they were on a common journey, and they had fun. And sometimes other people were there. Sometimes the classes were 10 people, and sometimes it was just them. And I think that, they were all very successful. One-on-one coaching can maybe fit much better to some children, but I think it's will be a lot to do with how children do in a group. You could imagine a child who's very, very talented, but at the same time is very insecure and doesn't feel, good in a group setting of 4 or 5 people, and sort of tries to disappear a little bit in this situation, but would be comfortable if there are 2 or 3 kids. We have these online classes where basically you can be as active or as passive you want. People, they talk to us in a chat, so their image is never on the screen, so they don't have to have this self-awareness. I think one-on-one it's like if you can provide it for your child with a coach where it really works and the chemistry is right, it can be really nice, but it will be usually very costly. If you don't feel that is something you can easily provide, then something like our academy is a good option. So the reason, the philosophy of our academy is that I come from quite modest beginnings. I didn't have any help. I didn't have ability to make anything of myself. I had to learn to do everything myself, and it took a very, very long time. I became a grandmaster on my 34th birthday with a horrible, horrible game. Story for another time. But when we started the academy, I was like, okay, we based it on the idea of a gym where there's many classes and you can go to as many as you want. If you did them individually, had to monetize them individually, it'd be difficult. But because everyone wants to have the ability to come and go as they want and find what's right for them, it's sort of, you can make it work financially. And this gives some very eager students, it gives them chance to work a lot, to go and receive a lot of classes. So our cost is 764 euros a year. We give about 600 hours of training for this, which is, of course, nobody can make everything. It's not real. You cannot attend 600 hours, and not all 600 hours would be appropriate for every student, but they can get a lot out of it. While if you wanted one-on-one classes with, let's say you get a class with Sam Shankland and you get one with Boris Gelfand, already your 764 euros are gone. And it's just 1 hour with each. But in the academy, you would, over a year, you would maybe get 20 hours with each of them. Plus, we have the rest of us who are not stupid that you would also get. So if you have the finances and you want to use it as a Kickstarter motivation, or if there's someone local who is really eager to work and not expensive, it can be really good, but it's not essential. If there's no inner drive from the child, it's very hard anyway.
Great. I have a little bit technical question about this topic. What do you think about the importance of a language barrier that might be there between the student and the teacher? Because nowadays there are many young talents who come from, say, countries where you don't really speak English, even in the school or nowadays, for example, there are kids who scored grandmasters norms and 10, I don't know, 10 or 11. They barely.
I think 11 is still the youngest for GM norm, but
I think 11 is the youngest.
But beating a GM, it's 9 now.
Yeah, that's kind of insane. So, for example, in my experience, I was told that I was proposed, let's say, I was offered to who worked with a kid because we would speak the same language. And so his first choice would have been a trainer where the common language would be too, let's say, difficult for both players. And therefore, this hurdle would be too important. I'm sure that, well, for example, now there are Ukrainian kids who are extremely strong, or also other people, say Uzbekistan, or there is a girl now, I believe, from Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka. I'm not sure what is the first language there, but anyway, what is your, let's say, once again, like ratio or limits in order to feel that alchemy and confidence that you have with the student, even if they don't speak your English that well? What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's important to be able to communicate. When I was young, I traveled in countries like the Soviet Union, and later it was Russia and Eastern Europe, where people generally didn't speak English, and you had to sort of try to communicate another way. I think it was very difficult. I worked with, so we have a 10-year-old Polish boy in the academy who is very, very talented. And he speaks English fine. And I've been also a training camp in Cyprus. I have a 7-year-old who made it to the Olympiad team by qualifying from the national championship. He spoke English. I'm like, I think it's getting quite normal for kids to speak English at a young age, especially if they have access to the internet. But in general, yeah, I think it's very important to be able to communicate. But it doesn't have to be that well necessarily. You need to be able to sort of, I think the emotional part that I was talking about, like the real interest in what the student want to do and in helping the student, I think that doesn't require perfect language or great common language. It's just important there's enough, like broken English to broken English is fine, for example. I think the most important thing is to communicate simple things. And this also because I'm a very strong believer that in sports, it's mastering the basics, which is leading to success, and working on really basic things. I would easily work with a top player on things that you would think is so fundamental that I also will give it in a class in our academy to kids. There's a lot of people in our academy who are not kids, but there's also many kids, and I would say the same things, because the basics are the basics, whether you are really good in other areas of the game or if you're just starting out in general. So I think for chess, most things it has to be kept simple anyway. But of course, if there's sort of a emotional barrier as well as a language barrier, it becomes very difficult.
Well, I think we can go to the next question.
Yeah. So just 3 more. What insights from your work with players such as Boris, Gelfand, and Sam Shankland can apply to be helping young players improve? Well, first of all, here, this is a very easy question to answer, because luckily with Sam and Boris, there was a lot of books that was produced. So you can see some of the stuff we did. With Boris and I, we wrote 4 books together, where 2 of them are very accessible, I think, positional decision-making in chess and dynamic decision-making in chess. And then we wrote 2 endgame books, which are not very accessible at all. But also I wrote a series called Grandmaster Preparation, which probably is the books I'm most famous for, where most of the material especially in the first 3 books, was material I had collected for Boris to train with, which took him to the World Championship. and then the last two books in the series, which were the Attack and Defense and in-game play, were also influenced by material I was giving to Sam. And later on, Sam has done a Grandmaster Training Camp 1 and now also 2, which will be out on Wednesday as a book. And today it's published as Sam Shankland's Attacking Workbook, something like that, on Chessable. So, like, this is how we worked, and I think simply applying this training material can be very useful. But I think there's something that's important with both, to say about both Sam and Boris, which is that they are very disciplined individuals. They are not training whenever they're motivated. They're training every day, working every day. When they're working towards a goal, they're working continuously, whether they feel it or not. And that's probably the reason why these two very average talents become such famous names. It's just consistency. Okay, let's just jump to the next one, because this sort of like builds back to the question we had about individual coaching a little bit. In what way does being a part of a team contribute to players' personal and chess growth? I think it's very important to understand we're all herd animals. Very, very rare that anyone achieves anything in the world on their own. And while for girls, they often like to socialize a lot, and social interaction between girls is often a lot about understanding and sympathy, and in general ways showing support to each other and strengthening the group thing. While for boys, it's much more about being hierarchical and try to sort of establish themselves within the group. And for chess development, that can be very, very useful. So, for example, Aravind and Karthikeyan are both quite a bit older than Pragnananda, and less so than Vaishali, but still, they never really saw those as their competitors. They saw each other as competitors, and they drove each other up, and that really helped a lot, having someone to compete against, who's also your friend, but a friendly competition. I think that's very, very healthy. Gelfand once said about playing with Leveronian, who's one of his closest friends, that whenever they played with each other, they always tried to impress each other. That was sort of the goal, the way they made competition friendly. I think one thing that's very important also is boys can be good at working alone, but they still need some sort of social interaction. While for girls, it's very, very difficult to work on their own. We haven't seen that a lot in chess history. Usually the female players come out of a situation where they're working with others. Often they're sisters with a coach. That's been a common thing. Let's jump to the last one and then see if there are any more questions.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. At what stage of a young player's development should psychological and mental training become part of the process? I think it's very important to learn to lose early and see it as not the end of the world and not meaning everything and not determining where you're going to end up in chess, but learning to learn not to lose and win with the same mental experience. I don't think that's necessarily healthy, but to learn that, okay, losing is part of the game, it's part of progression, and to learn to channel disappointment into effort. If you want to not lose, you should get better, and you should work on getting better. And one thing that sort of has happened a little bit in the last few decades is people have tried to, there's been this, for some period, there was this, everyone gets a trophy, or, the cartoons, they sort of removed anything. In Tintin, Captain Haddock was no longer smoking and drinking, or swearing, I think, even. In other things, cartoons, they have removed guns, not to give children any feeling of violence. And it's sort of been a little bit lying to children, protecting them from the real world. And then when the real world turns out to be very competitive, very brutal, then they're not ready for it. And it's a lot of people, including myself, have said for a long time, it's a bad idea. It doesn't give good outcomes. I don't think it has given good outcomes. And yeah, it's I think teaching a child to become a fighter, someone who's difficult to beat early on, is not just good for chess, but it's a good life skill. Someone who doesn't give up, but can resist and resist and resist, where you have to, like Alekhine said, you have to beat them in the opening, in the middle game, and the end game to beat them, because they don't give up. I think that's something I would try to encourage in students, and in my own children. I've also tried to encourage it, of sort of dealing with what they can do rather than the world being unfair to them. It's one thing. And the other thing, which is very, very, very important and very difficult also, is to try to teach impulse control. The most basic example of that is the young player who plays way too fast because they get an idea and they can't wait to play it. And teach them that before idea and execution, there's a moment of thinking. And that's essentially what we try to teach in chess. There was an 8th question, but I didn't think it was very good for the lecture. So this is the end of my lecture. Available for questions, should there be any?
Are there any questions? Sorry, I wasn't here for very last part. I have a bit of cough. Yeah.
When you're very young children, 5 to 6 years old, what's basic face-to-face training, online training?
Yeah, so the question is, when you're dealing with very young kids, like 5, 6 years old, is there a difference, or is it better to train online or in presence?
Well, in person is always better. So, and I think for online training, yes, it's getting sort of more and more available, and it's there's basically sort of 2 dimensions, where on the one hand, in person is better. It's better for the trainer because you can see a lot of things from the body language of the student. You have just simply a different vibe. But then there's a practical thing. It's like it's great if you live in if you lived in Moscow in the 1980s, if you live in Chennai now, or you live in Charlotte in North Carolina or something like that. There are a few places where there's a lot of opportunity for training, a lot of in-person thing. But even then, you cannot get as much as you would want to if you want to become really good. So I think online is what's economical and practical. But if you have someone in your neighborhood who you can work with, who wants to either do like classes in a local club or work one-on-one with a kid, I think that's of course preferable. But it's if not, then it's like with Nodirbek Abdusattorov, I'd worked with him for 10 months before I met him in person. And in all the time we worked together, there was I met him twice. We met him in the airport. He was going to Iceland, and I was living briefly in Copenhagen. We met him in the airport for like an hour, and had tea and cakes and chatted. And then another time he came to my house for a week. Of course, that week was very good training, but we were also managing to do good training online. But sometimes, especially with young kids, it's important that parents are checking that they're not sitting there and turning on the engine. It happens far more often than you would think. So there's that. But I think like for as a parent of a child, I would say online is good, in person is better. The most important thing is what makes the child work, what makes them try, what makes them sit and think and engage with things. And some need more pushing than others, and will respond very well to being pushed. It's like it's not pushed off a cliff; it's a gentle push forward. Come on, you want to go to the tournament? Let's do the training. Here's the books, solve the exercises. You don't have to be a good player to help your kid with exercises. You just need to have the book and get them to put up the position and make them think. So to a great extent, it is all about getting the kids to work themselves, and then you can add some things on top. And their online can give you some access to things that wouldn't be possible in your local area, and is within budget, let's say it like that.
Great. Any other questions? Yes, please.
One question about mention of parent who is just player in the past. And is it okay if he is the main coach of a very talented young
For the first time,
young boy? Yeah. And when they became the same strength, is it now in a situation that I should find some grandmaster?
So the question is, if you are a chess player yourself, and if your kid is a talented player, does it make sense to be the main coach until some point, or until the point where you basically reach when your kid reaches your strength? And is it necessary to find a better coach once he reaches that strength?
Well, I put up the slide at the beginning here. So we can hear. And one of my points with putting up my rating, okay, I played for a period maybe a little bit better, but I was 2550 almost, and I've trained quite a few 2700 players. What is important for is that I'm organized, that I'm focusing on what they're learning, and that I'm good at using resources beyond myself. Of course, because I work on chess nonstop and have done it for 30 years, I understand chess at a very high level. And that's not the same as I can play at a very high level. I cannot. I'm a normal grandmaster, and I'm getting older, and I blunder. Well, yesterday in class, I blundered the queen. I simply moved it where it could be taken. It happens all the time. We had a in-person camp in Spain in May, and when I first blundered maiden one, I said, I promise it won't be the last time, and it wasn't. But luckily, it was only twice. I think you should trust your own intuition. Like if you feel that the training is working for the child, and they're progressing, and they are excited, and they feel like going, the fact that you have a good trainer, someone who really cares, someone who's motivated, someone who understands chess in the house. This is try to replace that with someone from the outside as the main trainer. I wouldn't do. Like, I'm a good trainer myself, but I would not think that that's necessarily a good choice. But of course, you have to be realistic about what you can do and what you can't do. And it's good to do, like, for example, what Ramesh was doing with his students in Chennai, which was to bring in other coaches simply to give them other perspectives, other ideas, something to help them move forward. But he was still the main trainer of the students. And we also have examples of very strong players where they were coached by parents to a certain extent, until they get into they need a second rather than a trainer. So I think you should trust your own judgment and not go with your own insecurities. Sometimes it's easier to undervalue ourselves than it is to overvalue ourselves.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
I can see many of my students struggling with time management, and I myself as a coach am struggling to find some methods to help them get better at this. And yeah, so if Mr. Aagaard can recommend some methods, build some better habits regarding time management.
Yeah, so the question is basically some last moment remedy against time management. Against time travel, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
both ways, yeah.
Yeah. No,
Maybe overthink. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So time trouble, it usually comes from a number of different things. One of the things is that players are not given enough time. That's one thing. You have to learn to make decisions, and you can absolutely do training in making decisions. That's not necessarily so difficult. For example, in the academy, we have this homework where on the last page, both in friendly and killer homework, there's 6 positions, and you give yourself a certain amount of time to make these 6 decisions. And part of the idea of it is that you look first at all 6 positions and decide where you want to use your time. So that's one way. That's to deal with slightly more difficult questions. But you can also have some sort of training where they have to solve things in 2 minutes. And it's not necessarily such difficult exercises, but just they have to sort of feel their way and make more intuitive decisions. But of course, analysis of the games, try to find out where is it time is lost. Often, what is happening is it's sort of a psychological trick, because we all have some need for certainty. And what people often try to do with positions is they try to control the position, where the psychological shift you want them to do is they need to sort of manage, instead of managing the position with certainty, they have to go back to the certainty of I'm doing the best I can here. The right thing is to make this decision within 3-4 minutes and not to think for a long time. And you sort of change the reward of certainty, not from trying to work out everything in a position where often there's nothing to calculate. So like I have this system of asking 3 questions. It's useful in positions where there's little to calculate, which is where are the weaknesses, which is the worst place piece, what's my opponent's idea. And the idea is that when you ask these questions, you get some ideas to, oh, I could react to this, I could react to this, I could react to this. And then you make a decision. And I've experienced often with very strong players that they're sitting thinking for a long time in position, they're not sure about anything. I ask the questions and they're like, oh yeah, of course I have to play this. And they're usually right. And it just goes quite quickly. So sometimes it's because they're trying to calculate in positions where there's nothing to calculate, and you have to try to improve your position. But again, like we're back to, you talk to the student, the child, you try to find out what's happening in the process, you identify the problem, and then there's like a 5-stage, this is from cognitive therapy, there's a 5-stage improvement. First, you establish what the problem is, then you make the same mistake again, and you realize you have made it. then you make the same mistake again. You realize the moment you made it, and then you're just about to make the same mistake again, but you stop yourself. And then finally you arrive at the last point, which is that you sort of are beyond this problem. And this is a normal process. And it's sort of, I always explain this process to students who have to change the thought process, because if they feel like they're a failure until they get it right, it's not very nice. It's not easy to be motivated by. But if they feel like, oh yeah, we're in this stage, they know the path, then it's much easier mentally to deal with challenges. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. I think this might be the last question.
Would be great, yes.
Thank you for your time, Jacob. I hope, I'm sure all the insights were pretty helpful. Even to me, I'm very happy to take away some very interesting thoughts. I'm not sure whether you will be here again during the next days.
No, this was my one visit. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you to everyone who showed up. It would have been really weird just sitting here talking to myself, which is basically the same as recording a chessboard course. But I hope you have a good time in Italy. It's a wonderful place, and it's full of wonderful people. And thank you very much again for inviting me.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.